In the previous videos, we've created a project and we've seen how we can add access control to our project. And even while we were testing the access control, we created some very simple HTML documents. So we've seen how we have a web server embedded in SAP HANA via the SAP HANA Extended Application Services, and we've done the most basic web type content, which is just serving out static HTML content. But in reality, we have a lot more HTML capabilities because embedded in HANA 1.0 SP5, we have the SAP UI5 framework. And that is SAP's user interface toolkit and runtime for creating modern client-side HTML5 based web pages. So we have the design time tools embedded inside HANA Studio, and we have all the runtime libraries already installed into HANA Studio in the repository. So let's see how we can leverage these tools to build a little nicer user interface than just hard coding some Hello World HTML. Now you might notice I've added a UI package to my existing project. That would create it in the repository under my main package. That's where I want to put this SAP UI5 project. But SAP UI5 is a completely separate project type. So we've got our XS project type that we created in the root, but I can't just start creating SAP UI5 content in this subfolder or sub package. What I want to do is create a new project, and I can choose the project type and come down here and I'll find SAP UI5, and I want to create a whole new application project. And it wants a project name, UI5 videos. Doesn't I'll just let it go in the default location, just like when I created the initial video series project, and later when I share it with the HANA repository, it will get copied once again into my repository workspace, just as it did before. Now SAP UI5, when you create your project, does let you choose target types, either desktop or mobile. I'm just going to target normal desktop browsers, and I am going to let it create my initial view for me. This is confirming the project name, the folder structure that we'll create. It always creates a sub-package under wherever we'll create it called web content, and then a folder within there to store the view and the controller for this particular project. And I'll make the base object named index. So to create an index.html and then a view and a controller for that, and I'll choose JavaScript as the development environment that I want to use to build my UI. We also have the choice of XML or JSON. So now we're just confirming everything that will be created, which libraries will be linked. So it'll link in some core SAP UI5 libraries. It will create a view named index.view.js. It will also create a controller, and we'll get an index.html in the root. Go ahead and say finish, and it will set up my project. No, we don't want to switch perspectives. Now I have an SAP UI5 project. I've got my view, I have my controller, I have my index, and this is pretty nice. We have not just HTML code completion for example here, like come here and say div, and I see the documentation of auto insertion, but also you'll see we have completion on the SAP UI libraries themselves and the UI elements. This really helps for building your user interface, since all the UI elements are basically JavaScript objects, and we work very heavily with JavaScript. Having the code completion for that is quite useful. Now, one thing we do need to change here is we need to change the source. The default path that it generates, it doesn't know where SAP UI5 is actually installed on this server, and it's actually in a little different path, SAP UI5 1. So we change that. That'd give us our link to the core JavaScript runtime for SAP UI5. And then I want to go to my view, and it's an empty view right now. There's no content that's being created on startup. And let's add just a little bit. Let's create a button. New sap.ui.commons button, and I'll just give it an ID of button, and I don't have any settings that I'll pass in. So you see how the code completion is pretty nice there. Then I can say my button, and I want to set text. There it is, set text. And what text do I want to put in there? We'll just put hello world on the button. And let's attach an event to this button so that when I press it, something actually happens. Button dot attach press, and let's go ahead and put a function. We'll just inline a function inside here to handle that event. Function, and then $sign represents the framework itself, and then I can say the name of a UI control button. So basically I'm saying take the UI element button and do a fade out. So do a little animation on it and that line. So basically when you press the button it will disappear. So I'm sure that's fun for our end user, confuse them to no end, but we're developers, we like to have fun with our end users, right? And now we'll create a panel. New SAP UI Commons panel, and we can chain, so we'll just set the text for the panel directly in the constructor here. Test case, let's just say video for SAP UI5. Doesn't really matter what we put in here. And panel. We'll add our button inside the panel. Add content. My button. Oops. Notice how I'm getting syntax errors as I type because I put the semicolon in the wrong place. That really helps as well. That's a nice addition of using the SAP UI5 tools over just plain text editors. And then let's return the search panel so that it will be drawn into the page. Okay. Looks good. My content is all created. Let's save that. But all we've done is create this project locally once again. So we have web content, we have our index HTML, we have our controller and our views. Now we need to share it with the repository so that it will be stored in HANA. And once again, going to my repository workspace, and then I need to find my package. But this time, instead of putting it in A1 videos, we want to put it in the UI package. And we'll take off the keep project folder because we don't want a subfolder with the name of the project. And I'll say finish. It is now shared with the repository, so we can do a commit. And now I can activate. just to prove that it's all on the server. And there we see our content all moved to the server correctly, and we are ready to test now. Alright, in order to test, let's bring up the web browser. Let's go to our new directory structure, so UI, and then web content, and index.html. And we have our panel, we have our button, it has the SAP themed UI look and feel, and if I press my Hello World button, then it fades out and disappears. A very simplistic user interface, mainly to demonstrate the process of using the SAP UI5 project, but in later videos we'll get into more detailed examples where we use more capabilities of SAP UI5.